In the years of Théoden's reign, Rohan remained as it had always been, a land of open plains, of wind that never fully stilled, of long horizons that did not end, but only faded into distance. If you enjoy calm stories from Middle-earth, you can stay a while, and if you'd like more like this, you can follow the channel. Now, the story begins. The grass moved constantly there, bending and rising again in quiet rhythm, as though the land itself breathed slowly beneath the sky. There were no great walls to define it, no borders that could be seen from afar, only space, only movement. And within it, the people of Rohan lived as they always had, close to the land, close to their horses, and close to the patterns that had guided them for generations. Theoden did not change this. He did not seek to shape Rohan into something different. He ruled it as it was, and in doing so, he allowed it to remain strong. The golden hole stood where it had long stood, raised above the plains, its wood catching the light of day and holding the warmth of fire at night. It was not built to impress. It was built to endure. Its doors remained open, its space shared. And within it, Théoden sat as king. Not distant, not removed, but present. He was not a young king when his name became widely known, nor was he yet old. He stood in the years between, where strength is still held firmly, but time has already begun to leave its mark. His presence was not loud. He did not carry his authority through raised voice or display. Like the land he ruled, he remained steady. What he said was measured. What he chose was considered, and what he held, he did not release easily. Those who rode with him did not follow because they were commanded. They followed because they trusted, not blindly, but completely. Théoden did not place himself above them. He rode among them, across the same plains, through the same wind, under the same sky. His horse did not carry him apart from the others. It carried him within them, and wherever he rode, there was a quiet certainty that the path ahead was known. Not because it had been planned, but because he was there. The riders of Rohan did not speak often of their king in grand terms. They did not need to. They saw him. They rode with him. And in that, they understood him. There were no great displays of power, no moments that called for sudden action, only the steady continuation of what had always been. And within that continuation, Théoden held his place, firm, unbroken. The wind moved as it always had. The plains stretched as they always would, and the kingdom remained. Not because it could not be changed, but because it did not need to be. Strength does not leave all at once. It does not fade in a single moment, nor does it announce its passing clearly. For Theoden, it remained. But it changed. The years of his reign were not marked by sudden shifts or great turning points. They followed one another in the same steady way as the wind across the plains, constant, familiar, and rarely questioned. And within that passage of time, something quieter began to settle. Not weakness, not loss, only weight. The kind that comes not from a single burden, but from many small ones carried over long years. Responsibility does not always show itself outwardly. It does not always bend the body or slow the step. Often, it remains unseen, held. And Theoden held it. The decisions of a king are not all remembered. Most pass without notice. Small choices, quiet judgments, moments that do not shape the world beyond the land they belong to, but they gather They remain, and over time they form something that cannot be set aside. Theoden did not speak of this. He did not carry his years as something to be seen. He remained as he had always been, measured, steady, present among his people. But there were moments, subtle and easily missed, where the passage of time could be felt. A pause before speaking, not from uncertainty, but from reflection. A longer stillness after a decision, not from doubt, but from knowing its weight. The hall remained unchanged. The fire burned as it always had. The voices within it rose and fell in the same steady rhythm. And Théoden sat among it all, listening, holding, allowing each moment to take its place fully before moving on. Those around him did not see this as a burden. They saw it as part of what made him king, because nothing in him moved lightly. Nothing was dismissed. Everything was given its place. The riders who rode with him still felt the same certainty as before. When he was among them, the path ahead did not need to be questioned. But even there, in the open plains, where the wind carried everything away, time remained. Not in the land. The land did not change, but in the quiet spaces between movement, in the moments where nothing was required or nothing needed to be done. Théoden did not grow distant. He did not withdraw. He remained, but the stillness within him deepened. Not as something that replaced his strength, but as something that settled beneath it, a foundation that had grown over years. There were no signs that called attention to it, no clear division between what had been and what was now. Only a gradual shift, the kind that does not mark itself, the kind that is only understood when enough time has passed to see it clearly. And yet, even within that quiet wait, his presence did not diminish. It did not lose its certainty. It did not become uncertain or divided. If anything, it became more complete. Because strength held over time does not disappear. It settles. It becomes something that does not need to rise in order to be known. And Théoden remained that. Not as he had been in his earliest years, but as something shaped by all that had come since. Steady, enduring, and still entirely a king. The change did not come as something that could be clearly seen. It did not arrive with a single moment that marked its beginning. It settled, slowly, in the same way that all things in Rohan seemed to settle, without haste, without drawing attention. The hall remained as it had always been. The fire burned, the doors stood open, the voices within rose and fell in quiet rhythm. Nothing appeared different, and yet something had shifted, not in the land, not in the people, but in the space between what was said and what was meant. There were words that began to linger longer than they should have, not spoken loudly, not pressed forward, but present. Suggestions that did not challenge, yet did not fully withdraw. A voice that did not rise above others, yet remained when others had fallen silent. Grima. He did not stand apart. He did not place himself above. He remained close, near enough to be heard without effort, quiet enough not to be questioned. His presence did not change the hall at once. It did not alter the way things were done, but it introduced something subtle, a hesitation, not in Theoden's strength, but in the space around it. Where decisions had once settled cleanly, they now lingered for a moment longer. Where silence had once held certainty, it now carried something else within it. Not doubt, not weakness, only a delay, so small that it might not have been noticed at first, but present. The riders of Rohan did not see this clearly, not in the open plains, not beneath the wide sky where the wind carried everything away. There, Theoden remained as he had always been, steady, certain, unchanged in the way he rode and the way he moved among them. But within the hall, where words remain after they were spoken, something had begun to take form. Grima did not command. He did not oppose openly. He spoke in ways that did not challenge what had been said, but shifted it slightly. A different path suggested, a longer consideration, a reason to wait. Nothing strong enough to resist, only enough to remain. Théoden did not become unaware. He did not lose what he had always held, but the weight of years already settled within him gave space for these moments to exist, not because he accepted them fully, but because he did not reject them immediately. And in that space, the shadow remained. It did not grow quickly. It did not spread outward. It stayed where it was, close, quiet, patient. The hall did not darken. The fire did not fade. The land beyond remained open and unchanged. And yet, the stillness that had once carried certainty now held something more. A presence that was not fully part of it, but not entirely separate either. Théoden remained a king. That had not changed. His strength had not left him. His presence had not diminished. But the clarity that had once settled immediately now took longer to reach. And in that time, the shadow had space to remain. Not strong, not complete, but present. There are moments that do not arrive with force. They do not break what has come before them. They do not push aside what has settled. They simply shift it. The hall remained as it had been. The fire burned low. The air moved slowly through the space. Nothing had changed in form. And yet, something within it had begun to reach its limit. The quiet that had once held certainty now carried weight. Not heavy, but present enough that it could no longer remain unnoticed. Théoden sat as he had always sat, still, measured. Théoden asked Crate. Unmoved in appearance, and yet beneath that stillness, something had begun to stir. Not suddenly, not as a return, only as a reminder. A presence that had never fully left. Gandalf entered without haste, not as one who came to disrupt, not as one who carried urgency. He did not raise his voice. He did not call attention to himself. And yet, his presence was felt at once. Not stronger than what was already there, but different. Clear. Where the hall had held something that lingered, he brought something that settled. He did not speak immediately. He allowed the space to remain as it was, allowed the quiet to hold. And within that quiet, something shifted. Grima's presence did not disappear. It did not retreat at once. But it no longer filled the same space. It no longer remained without question. The air itself seemed to change. Not in sound, not in movement, but in clarity. As though something that had been slightly obscured was now seen more fully. Théoden did not rise quickly. He did not turn at once. There was no sud dive, so slow return, the kind that does not rush forward. Breath, deeper than before. A stillness that no longer carried weight, but steadiness. The difference was not large, but it was enough. Gandalf spoke then, not loudly, not with force, His words did not command. They did not press. They did not break what had been. They reminded. And in that reminder, something within Theoden answered, not as something new, but as something that had always been there. His gaze, which had remained steady even through the shadow, now held a different clarity. Not sharper, not stronger, only unobstructed. The hall did not change. The fire remained. The space stayed the same, but what moved within it was no longer held back. Grima spoke again, as he had before, but the space no longer received him in the same way. What had once lingered now settled quickly. What had once remained now passed. There was no struggle, no conflict that rose to meet the moment, only a shift. Clear, complete. Théoden rose, not as he had before, not with the quiet weight of years, but with something that had been restored. Not strength newly gained, but strength returned to its full place. He did not speak many words. He did not need to. What had changed did not require explanation. It was known, felt, understood without being named. The shadow that had remained did not break. It did not scatter. It simply no longer held its place, and without that place, it could not remain. The hall returned, not to something new, but to what it had always been, and within it, Theoden stood as he once had, fully unobstructed, a king. When Théoden rode again, it was not announced with great sound. There were no calls that carried far across the plains, no gathering that broke the stillness of the land. The riders came as they always had, one by one, in quiet preparation. Horses were saddled, cloaks drawn close. The wind moved steadily across the fields, as though nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. Theoden stepped out from the hall without pause. There was no hesitation in his movement. No weight held between one step and the next. What had once taken time to settle now remained clear. His presence did not rise. It did not need to. It was already there. The riders saw it at once. Not in his words, but in the way he stood. In the way he moved toward his horse. In the absence of anything that had held him before. No one spoke of it. No one needed to. They understood. The moment did not belong to noise. It belonged to certainty. Théoden mounted without effort. The motion was simple, unbroken, as though it had never been otherwise. The horse beneath him did not shift or resist. It held steady, as though it recognized what had returned. The riders gathered, not tightly, not in formation that had to be held. They came together as they always had, each one taking their place without needing to be directed. The land stretched before them, wide, open, unchanged, and for a moment they remained still, not waiting, not preparing, only present. The wind moved through them, through the cloaks, through the manes of the horses, through the grass that bent and rose again. Then Théoden turned his gaze forward, not sharply, not as a command, only as a direction. And with that, they began. The movement was not sudden. It did not break the quiet. It entered it. Hooves met the ground in steady rhythm. Not loud, not forced, only enough to carry them forward. The plains opened before them as they always had. Distance did not press against them. It welcomed them. The riders did not rush. They did not need to. The pace remained measured, certain, held. And within that movement, something returned that had not been present before. Not speed, not force, but unity. Each rider moved as part of the whole, not separate, not following, but within. And at the center of it, Théoden remained, not ahead, not behind, but where he needed to be. The wind carried nothing away from them. It moved with them. The land did not resist. It held them, as it always had. And as they rode, there was no sense of what lay ahead as something uncertain. Not because it was known, but because it did not need to be. The path did not have to be seen fully, only taken. And Theoden rode it without question, without pause, as he had once done, as he would now continue to do. After the ride, there are no sudden endings, no moment where all things come to rest at once. What follows is quieter than what came before. Not because less has happened, but because what needed to be done has already been set in motion. The land does not change its nature. The plains remain wide. The wind continues as it always has, moving across the grass without pause, without direction that can be held. The riders do not speak often. There is no need. The rhythm of movement has already settled into something complete. And within that rhythm, Theoden remains, not as he had been in the hall, not as he had been when the weight of years rested more heavily upon him, but as he is now, clear, present, unburdened. There are moments between one stretch of land and the next where nothing calls for attention, where the horizon remains unchanged, where the sky holds the same quiet tone from one breath to the next. In those moments, Théoden does not look back. He does not measure what has passed. He does not consider what may come. He remains within the movement, within the present, as he always has when unburdened by what surrounds him. The strength that had returned to him does not rise outward. It does not seek expression. It settles. It becomes part of him again. Not separate, not something newly held, only restored. The riders feel it, not as something that leads them, but as something that remains among them. The same certainty, the same quiet alignment. There is no need to call direction, no need to gather what is already together. The land carries them forward, and Theoden moves within it. There are no great words spoken in these moments, no declarations, no final thoughts given voice, because nothing needs to be said. What has been understood does not require sound. The wind passes, the grass bends, the hooves meet the earth in steady rhythm. And within it all, there is a stillness that does not belong to silence, but to completion. Not an ending, but a settling. The kind that comes when nothing remains unresolved, when nothing presses forward or holds back. Only movement, only presence, only the quiet continuation of what has already been set in place. And within that quiet, Théoden remains. Not as a king apart, not as a figure held above others, but as part of the land itself, steady, unbroken, at rest within motion. In the years that followed, the land of Rohan did not hold its memories loudly. It did not mark them in stone or carry them in words that were often repeated. It held them in quieter ways, in the movement of the wind across the plains, in the steady rhythm of hooves over open ground, in the spaces between one moment and the next, where nothing needed to be said. The name of Théoden remained, not as something that needed to be explained, not as a story told in full, only as something known. Those who had ridden with him did not speak often of what they had seen. They did not gather to recall it. They did not shape it into something larger than it was. They carried it. In the same way, they carried the land itself, without needing to hold it tightly, without needing to repeat it, because it did not fade, it remained. The golden hall stood as it always had. The fire burned, the doors opened to the wind. And though time moved forward, though new voices filled the space, and new days followed one another, the presence of what had been did not disappear. It settled into the way things were done, into the quiet understanding of what it meant to lead, of what it meant to remain. Theoden's strength was not remembered in moments of noise, not in the rise of battle or the fall of it. It was remembered in stillness, in the way he had stood, in the way he had returned to himself, in the way he had ridden without needing to be followed. His name did not grow beyond itself. It did not gather more than it needed. It remained clear, simple, complete, Théoden. And in that name, there was no need for more. Those who came after did not seek to become him. They did not shape themselves against his memory. They lived as the land allowed, as the wind carried them. But somewhere within that quiet rhythm, there remained a point that did not move. A presence that had once stood among them and had not changed, even as time passed. The plains continued, the wind remained, the riders moved as they always would, and within it all, the memory of Theoden did not stand apart. It rested, as part of the land itself, as part of what had been and what would remain. If you'd like to remain in these quiet stories, there are more waiting for you. You can stay and let another begin. And if you return often, you can follow the channel. Good night.